We're talking about motivation. So not the kind of motivation you need to make changes in your life per se. Instead, we're exploring the motivation you need to simply enjoy your life the way it is. We have jobs, we have tasks that we have to do every day, but that doesn't mean we're always motivated to do them. My next guest claims you don't have to go far to find this type of motivation. It could already be there inside of you. You just have to know where to look. Psychologist and friend of the show, Golightly, is joining me with ways to find internal motivation for the things we're already doing. We need this. We need you. This is a fantastic topic. Why is it so valuable? Why is it an important one to talk about?
This is something that comes up with almost everyone I meet professionally in my office. They're asking me, Tom, I want to be more motivated. How do I engage life differently? And there's a big line of research about flourishing. How do we live our best life? How do we become our best selves? And what we've seen with persistent, meaningful engagement, we're more likely to do that when we just love doing the thing just because we're doing it. And it's called intrinsic motivation. And so when we have that natural drive, you know, we really just enjoy choosing in to these activities. And there are things we can do to promote that internal drive.
I'm really anxious to hear what you have to say. I was reading, I won't call it an article, I think it was an online posting of some sort, a little snippet of writings, but they were talking about how if you really care about something, if it's truly valuable and in line with your value system, you'll do it. And I almost, it kind of maybe hit a nerve with me personally, but I was like, I don't know if that's the end of it. I don't know if that's it, because I can tell you there are a lot of valuable things that are in line with who I am and what I believe in, and I'm not necessarily perfect at practicing them every single day. Is that where intrinsic motivation can step up and meet the gap?
That's a part of it, and that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up today, being value congruent. It's really important. If it aligns with who we think we are and who we want to be. That's part of it. It's not the only thing to it, though. There are other things. However, I think a lot of people don't know their values enough. They kind of do, but they've never really specifically or intentionally said, yeah, this is what I like about life, and this is where I want to put my time. And maybe that's a different topic for a different day, is how do we find what our values are, and how do we be intentional in making those decisions?
Aligning our life with that purpose. You do have ways we can promote internal motivation, and it starts with what you call the big three.
So without these three, we're probably not going to be really internally motivated, and that's autonomy, competence, and connectedness. And starting with autonomy, we all want a little bit of control or choice over how and when we engage. Think of kids in piano lessons, right?
Oh boy.
And all of our kids did piano, and there's going to be, to some degree, like, hey, have you practiced today? Have you? And that external push. But if we can even give them a little bit of freedom to say, this is what I want to play for these minutes, or this is when I want to practice, giving them ownership and control, giving ourselves ownership and control of how and when we're engaging is going to promote just loving engaging in it. You know, if I like what working out does for me, but if someone told me when I had to work out and everything I had to do every time I worked out, I probably wouldn't love it as much. So having a little bit of autonomy can help us out.
So a big parenting tip line there, as well as we try to motivate our children toward good choices and good practices.
Negotiate it a little.
Autonomy, we have to have it. The number two of the big three, competence.
Competence is interesting. So I work with elite athletes, and I'll ask them, what do you love about your sport? And a lot of times they'll say, winning. And I'm like, well, then why don't you just line up a bunch of sixth graders and mop the floor with them, right? And they respond like that. You're like, okay, you're right. It's not just winning. So there's a little bit of a balance there, and we call it kind of a challenge skill balance. We have to be pushed a little bit, but we can't be pushed too much. We have to have the belief that we have the skill to meet that demand. So it's going to challenge us to grow, but it's also not going to overwhelm us. If we feel like the challenges in our lives are too much, we're going to be anxious. If we feel like it's not enough, we're going to be bored and pretty apathetic. So we got to find that right thing that's pushing us a little bit, but then promotes that growth to say, yeah, I can meet that demand. I can do that.
I have a really good girlfriend who had an amazing opportunity, a professional opportunity presented to her that she would have, you know, but said she dreamed about, right, her whole life. And she said no. She turned it away, not out of fear, but I think out of courage that she knew it was too much of a stretch. And I admire that. I admire someone who can recognize, like you described, kind of their own strengths and also their own limitations at the same time.
Yeah, I'm not quite ready for that huge challenge. Think of someone that bakes and people love their baking. doing it as a business, that can be overwhelming, right? And we might even lose that intrinsic love and motivation for it.
Connectedness. This isn't a word we hear very often in that verbiage. So explain how it applies to intrinsic motivation.
So how do my activities help me connect with other people, and how do they connect with me?
Okay.
If that's something that we all have, that social need, and sometimes we have a struggle meeting that need while we're doing activities that we love. When I think of athletics, competition is important, but cooperation is also important. Some of my best friends in life came from competition. I competed against them, and we created this bond competing. But also my teammates who I'm cooperating with are good friends of mine as well. So we kind of need both of those to help spurn us to like, okay, there's a little different energy about each of those that keeps us going inside.
That makes sense. I'll pull it into my mom world as well. I mean, I know a lot of women who pour themselves into motherhood and describe it as, you know, their greatest blessing and their greatest life calling, yet it can feel isolating, it can feel lonely. So as you bring up the connectedness, right, how we're connecting with other women, other mothers, that plays a role in how motivated we feel is what I'm hearing you say. Yes,
and it's really important to really be intentional about that, outline that. I know there's that word and I keep bringing it up. It, just like the value congruence kind of comes up all the time. We have to have social needs met, and if we're not connecting this, even like a music performance, how do we connect to the audience? How's the audience connecting to us? Yeah. That's going to be really important.
This is juicy. I like it. You mentioned the value congruence, another way we can find that internal motivation, making sure it lines up with who we say and who we pledge to be. You also encourage people to remove competing interests. How does this apply?
So what's important about that, everyone comes in and is like, I want to be awesome at all the things all the time. And
make me the master,
exactly.
Tom.
And there's no possible way to do that. I had a football coach in high school that used to warn us just about this time of year as we're getting ready to start practices every day. You know, quit your jobs, warn your girlfriends, you're not going to be spending much time with them. and it was his way of saying, those aren't bad things.
Yeah.
But if we're trying to do too much and trying to be awesome at all of these ways, we're not going to naturally engage with those things. We're not going to be mindful. We're not going to feel that love because we're going to be worried about all these other things that we have to do. Yeah. So it's really important to minimize those things. Going back to motherhood, how many tasks are there involved in motherhood? And you hear people like, oh, I'm missing this in life. I'm missing this in life. I'm missing this. It's like, no, but where are you at? Are you really enjoying that motherhood role? Because it seems like that's where you live. And it's okay that these other things fall by the wayside every once in a while.
We can't do it all.
We cannot do it all. But we're going to connect and be motivated if we eliminate some of those other competing interests.
I love this topic. I love your advice, and I love how this applies to so many facets of our lives and our children and families' lives as well. Tom, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.